Well, good morning, everyone. And every day we rise is a great day to be alive. And welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talks morning show. I'm James Slim Overton, and we're here with hosts Leah Drake Stitt and Thomas the Colonel Chapman. Good morning, hosts.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning,
morning. Good
James.
morning. How you doing?
And before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody if you're watching on Facebook or you live or you're watching on YouTube live, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment and share. Share with the rest of the world, especially with the show we had this morning. A little bit of Black history, a little bit of American history, really. So we have as our guest, and no, it's not Kenny Wright, who as you can see, Kenny Wright was the former mayor. This is Ken Wright, who is an author of The Buffalo Soldier and Black Cowboy History. He's also a artist, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that as well today. But welcome, Ken. And before we get started, I always have a little something I want to play by the Persuasions from 1971. Buffalo Soldier. Buffalo soldier, we used to fly in this new land. Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo soldier. Heavy wind will they call you obey. Okay, it goes on a little longer than that, but I want to get into the show this morning. But I guess some of y'all remember the Persuasions,
Yes.
And
Yes,
I think
do.
Bob Marley did a version of Buffalo Soldier as well.
Yes.
But I thought that Persuasions rendition of Buffalo Soldier was just everything. And maybe as we are going off, I'll play a little bit more of it. But anyway, Carolyn, you want to start us off with the conversation with our special guest here this morning?
Well, yes. Good morning. Good morning, Ken. How you doing?
Good morning, Colonel. I'm doing well this morning. I am blessed by the best. I am so faithful and blessed to be here. And I tell you what, it's so wonderful seeing you guys on the screen and waking me up this morning. God woke me up this morning.
Just like Jack Holmes.
Oh,
Get
boy.
up from there.
Jack Holmes, get up from there. I remember.
Well, you know what? Since this is Black History Month and Black history is American history. So I'll ask the three of us who are on this on the show today. Did y'all run out there and get y'all Trump sneakers this weekend?
Oh Lord, no.
No, listen. I got a pair, but you know what I did? I put them under the rope, under the house, man, and burned them.
Yeah, that's a good thing. But the thing is, you still bought them, so you still supported him. So
Oh no.
Yeah, but
Let me rescind that. I didn't buy
just
them.
don't buy them. Because he thinks black people are a fool. And so so I just had to put that out.
Just that.
Yes. So the first thing I'd like to say is one, it's interesting, when we look at the history of the Buffalo Soldiers, and you go back and seeing how Congress organized them as a regiment, a couple regiments to support and have them fight against the Indians back in the day. How Congress had black people fight against another minority.
Come on, tell it.
And you see how, and I draw the similarities between Trump and what he's trying to do, and the Republican Party trying to pit Black peoples and brown people against others and trying to eliminate us slickily. And so that's a context of, if you look at what happened back then, is you spin it around. They're trying to do the same thing now, and people are falling for it. We fell for it back then, and we're gonna fall for it back now. So, Ken, now that I've said that, I'm gonna let you talk.
Amen. Thank you so much, Colonel. And you know what? You saying that, what a beautiful introduction to the way we are today and how Trump is trying to push us back and being blindfolded. Some of us are blindfolded. And when I say blindfolded, it's almost like, gosh, even going further back than that, when we were slaves and we were brought here from West Africa on the slave ships, and how we were blindfolded then, thinking that we were coming to a better place, a better place, not knowing where we were going. But here we are. But yeah, in reference back to what you said, the Buffalo Soldiers, and I'm so thankful. Thank you, Slim and Leah, for being here. Thank you for having me here today. And I'm just here by the grace of God. That's the only thing I can tell you, the reason I'm here. But the Buffalo Soldiers, you know, they were founded back in 1866. And as you said, Colonel, Congress formed these men. 10,000 men recently coming out of slavery. You know, they said we were freed in 1863 by the Emancipation Proclamation. But here we are, still fighting it. And as we go on and walk down that road, the 9th and 10th Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers, founded 1866. And they were founded out in Fort Warren Air Force Base, Wyoming. And the thing about it, Congress was saying, well, what do we do with these men? What do we do with these men that just came out of slavery? Let's put them in a group, a segregated group of military men in the Army. And let's form them up. Let's put them out there and send them out west to combat the Indians, the Navy, African, not African, but the Indians that were here during that time out west. And Indians had this land. They were the first to be here. They were first on this land. And so why did Congress send these men, put these men together, and the Army send them out west? Well, one reason I tell you this, and this is my opinion, they were sent out there to fail. They thought that they would fail. They thought that these men, and it was said that Black men would not make good soldiers. They would not make good warriors. You see, they put us down before we even started. But look at what happened. They went out there and fought. They built roadways. They built telephone poles. They put up transportation to go out there. And listen at this. What was the transportation that they had, guys? They were on what?
Well, on horseback.
They were on horseback.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. And most of these guys did not know how to ride a horse, never had been on a horse before. But they did. They did the job. They put them on horses. They learned to bond with a horse. And if we have time later, I'll talk about bonding and how that's done with a horse when you get a horse. In fact, my horse, Mr. Major, I have a big black, yes, sir. Yes. He's a big, listen, he has a military name.
He's a big one too.
Oh man, he's big. Look, Leah can tell you about it. Leah, have you been on my horse?
I've been on Mr. Major.
And you see, and the horse remembers you. Whenever Leah would come up or see him, and I remember the time, Leah, I don't know if you remember or not, that you were wearing a bracelet. And your bracelet had the same colors. And at that time, we had another horse with us, Rocky, which was one of my Buffalo Riders' horse. and your bracelet had the same colors, the browns and the whites and the tans, and it was the same color that of Rocky. And
Uh-huh.
I remember that, and we took a picture of that with you standing next to Rocky and over there with Mr. Major.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
indeed. I remember that, Ken.
Yeah, that was good times, man. But I tell you what, talking back about the Buffalo Soldiers, uh, they went out there out west and they're fighting against the Native Americans, the Cheyenne, and the Plains Indians that were out there. And let me ask a question, guys. Why were they called Buffalo Soldiers, and who gave them that name? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked that question.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
I'm glad you
I have
asked
an answer for you, though.
Well, the name was given to them by the Native Americans,
Mm-hmm.
the Cheyenne Indians. And why? Why? Because of the texture of the hair.
Yeah.
Well, mine is growing back, but gosh, you can kind of see it a little bit there. The texture of the hair, the skin, the brown colored skin on these men. And
Mm-hmm.
what did it do? It reminded them of what?
The buffalo.
The buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
The buffalo. But more important than the look, it was their fighting spirit.
Mm-hmm.
These men went out to prove to the military that they were worthy, even though they were coming out of slavery. These men wanted to prove that I'm as good or maybe better than my fellow fighter, my fellow white officers and the white men, because the officers were in charge of the Buffalo Soldiers. Now, there were a few officers that were black. Henry Flipper is one. He graduated West Point, 1877. Don't you remember? Weren't you there? That's when he graduated, 1877. And then he went on and joined the Buffalo Soldiers, 10th Cavalry in 1878. I'm sorry, is when he joined the Buffalo Soldiers. And the rest of his history is laid there for us to look and see today. And so as these men were out there fighting the Native Americans, a question came up. And what was that question? And Colonel, you touched on it a bit when you said black men fighting against men of color. You see, these Native Americans of color, black men of color. And so they asked a question. One of the chiefs asked a question. It could have been Geronimo, or it could have been one of the other chiefs. And these were great warriors. These chiefs were not slighted. These guys were tough fighters. And that's what they saw in the Buffalo Soldier, tough fighters that reminded them of the buffalo. But the question was asked by the chief, why are you fighting for the white man? Why? Because you are coming out of slavery. You are a slave to the white man, but yet you're fighting for him. Why? And what was the answer, guys? Well, the answer was this. The black soldiers say, yes, I'm fighting. I'm fighting to get my freedom of slavery, from slavery, and to prove my strength, to prove that I am a man. I'm a warrior. I can do a job as well or as best as anybody else. But it just so happens they put me out here in front of you. And then he said to the Indian, you are fighting to keep your freedom. So we're both fighting for freedom against each other. How about that? Look at this question, man. And it's a powerful one. I wish I could have been standing there to hear that conversation. Were you there? Anybody? Were you there?
Right.
Don't you remember?
But you know what? I like to draw parallels. And what you
Yes.
said is so profound.
Yes.
Then you parallel to present day history. When you look at somebody like Tim Scott
Come on, tell it, man.
standing behind the president,
Tell it.
Grinning.
being
Showing all his teeth.
being debased, being
Yes.
humiliated,
Yes.
and just being kicked out and kicked around and bashed in his buck teeth and everything.
Yes.
And he comes out and says, "I love you," just like a slave.
Yes.
One of the folks that wants to take us, he will sell us out. Well, he's been selling us out ever since he's been on the national scene.
Yes.
But to see him grovel with a white in front of the white supremacist,
Yes.
of was running for president, and all his accolades trying to support white supremacy.
Yes.
And to sell us down the road if he should ever get there.
Yes. Yes.
You know, he went so far as to get engaged to a white woman and to prove that he is equal. Even though I think on the internet says it's a false flag, because if he doesn't get picked for vice president, you'll see a breakup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes,
Ken, let me ask you. Ken, let me ask you a question about your book. How long did it take you to write the book, and what was your motivation for writing the book? I know you've been part of the Buffalo Riders for a long time, which involved in parades around Hampton Roads and everything. So, what motivated you to write the book? It's a lot of information out about the Buffalo Soldier,
Yes,
but maybe you had I know you didn't have a personal experience, but maybe something really affected you for writing that book. And how long did it take you to put all that together?
Slim, thank you for bringing that up and mentioning my book. This book, Slim, took years to write. Years. Now, the Buffalo Riders, we were formed back in 1997. And the reason why, and we keep alive the history of the Buffalo Soldiers and the Black Cowboys as well. That's why we call ourselves the Buffalo Riders. And our uniform is kind of a mixed blend between the Western Cowboy and the Buffalo Soldiers. When I first started riding a horse, I have to tell you the whole story if we got time. When I first started riding, all of my friends were white riders. I didn't have anyone that looked like me on a horse. And I said, there has to be blacks somewhere on horseback. So I started investigating and looking around. And I talked to a good friend of mine, Al Smith, and another guy that we met, Ricky Blunt, who has passed away now. And Ricky was our vice president. And I said, guys, let's start a club of black riders. And let's keep alive that history of the Buffalo Soldiers and the Black Cowboys. And so we did. So that part of the history is done, and you see it and you hear us, and there it is, man. But as we would be on horseback riding, black men and women, we had female riders too, Buffalo Riders, they would ask the question, and blacks would ask the question, there are no black cowboys. What are you doing on a, is that your horse? Where are y'all from? And I was joking. You know what I would say when they say, where you from? I said, we just landed that airplane you see over there on the field. And all the horses on the airplane. And we just got off. We thought we'd come here and educate everybody about the black cowboy. But then I would say, you know what? I'm right here in Hampton Roads, Virginia. I live in Chesapeake, Virginia, from Richmond, Virginia, but live here in Chesapeake. And that's where most of us are from, right in the area. And so I would say, I need to write a book about this history of the Buffalo Soldier and the Black Cowboy. So I started writing a little bit at a time, Slim, just a little bit at a time. I started writing, and this is my personal feeling, my personal story about the book. And so finally, when it was completed, it's not a very long book. You can see it's not very thick. It's only about 36 pages, and anyone can sit down and read it. But it tells the story. It tells the story of not only the Buffalo Soldier, but the Black Cowboy and cowgirl, the women that were cowgirls out west. It tells that story. And listen at this. How about this one, Colonel? I was blessed to be able to meet 3 Buffalo Soldiers. They're in my book. You'll read about them.
Was one of them Mark Matthews?
No, not Mark. Now listen at this. Now Mark Matthews was up in the, if I'm not mistaken, he was out of Virginia area, but not him. But let me tell you, do you remember? Have you heard the name John Nichols? Trooper John Nichols. He was a sergeant. Look him up. He was up near the Petersburg area. He was in the 10th Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers, served in the 1940s is when he was on horseback. And he used to tell a story, and he told it until he passed away a couple of years ago at 97 years old. I had the chance to sit down and talk with him and speak with him. Another couple of soldiers, Carl Cuffey, Trooper Carl Cuffey from Chesapeake, Virginia.
Wow.
Buffalo Soldier, 10th Cavalry, 1940 to 1945, on horseback, riding his horses, telling his story. I sat down and just took my pen and taking notes as he's talking, man. As he's talking, I'm writing. Another guy, Trooper Goodwood Sutton, Chesapeake, Virginia, served 9th Cavalry, Buffalo Soldiers, 1941 to 1945. On horseback, man. Look at these men. Can't you see them on horseback? And let me tell you the story about what they said to me. Here's what Buffalo Soldier Carl Cuffey said, Ken, before you go into your horse's stall, knock on the stall door. Just knock. Tap, 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 tap. If that horse does not respond to you by turning and taking a look at you or walking to the stall gate, leave him alone. He doesn't feel like working today. He don't feel like being ridden.
Wow.
Just stand there. Get another horse. I tried it, guys. I tried it. I knocked on Major's stall door. Mr. Major, knock, 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 knock. Major turned around and looked at me and walked to the gate. Great day of the morning, man. That's pondering. And then quickly, let me tell you the story about Goodwood Sutton. He said on a cold winter day, Buffalo Soldier out west on horseback. And there's where these men, these soldiers on horses, and snow about 3 feet deep, up to the horse's knees. That's where these men were, man. A cold winter day. And guess what? Trooper in charge, the officer, a white man, he was more concerned about the cold horses than the cold soldiers. He said, let's get these horses in. It's too cold for them out here. These horses are shivering. Let's go in. He wasn't concerned about the men. They were out there, man, in that cold weather too, and they brought the horses in. These are true stories, man. It's in my book. It's right.
One thing I like about your book, Ken, some of the short research I did, your book concentrates on the Buffalo Soldiers that were here in Virginia. I saw some videos that they said Buffalo Soldiers were spread out throughout the country, and they mentioned Virginia, but you specifically naming some people from Chesapeake, and that's what we talk a lot about here on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, recognizing people from this area that have done some things in history that are a part of history that need to be recognized. And I see Christopher Green on that's tuning in on our Portsmouth Coffee Talk Facebook page is familiar with Mr. Sutton. I mean, hearing about him. So he made a comment about, he remembers Mr. Sutton that you mentioned there.
Yeah.
So thank you, Christopher Green, for watching, for one thing, and tuning in and making a comment. Yeah. But go ahead, just showing a picture.
Yeah, that's a picture of Goodwood Sutton. If you can see him, right there is Goodwood Sutton. Right there at the top.
Yeah.
And below is, wait a minute.
Nichols.
That's John Nichols at the bottom.
Yes.
And let me show you. Let's turn the page here, guys. Let's turn the page. And look at this Sergeant Carl Cuffey. And these men were from where? The two from Chesapeake was from Cuffytown, right in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Right in Chesapeake.
Cuffytown, man. Wow, good stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, that's the story. Talking about why did I write this book? And you know, I've heard people say, well, you know, Ken, I've read about the Buffalo Soldiers. I've read about them. I know about them. And I said, you know what? You can't get enough, man.
That's
and let me
right.
tell you one thing. My book, when you get my book, it tells my story as well. So you have not read my story. You don't know Ken Wright's story. You don't know about this trooper and why he's doing what he's doing. Man, I've been called some names, and I'm sure you all have too during your trials and your times of in your journey through life. I'm sure you've been called some names. I've been called names by when I joined the first riding club, all white riders. I was the first black to ride and join this club called the Tidewater Western Riders. First one to join it in parades, you know. But some of the guys in that club didn't want me in there. You know that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know it's true. But that didn't stop me. That encouraged me to keep going and to be better. And let me tell you one thing. Can I say this about growing up? I watched on TV, and you guys might remember Roy Rogers, Gene Autry. You guys might be too young to remember these cowboys.
No,
No, we're not too young.
None of us are too young to remember Roy Rogers.
They were my heroes.
Yeah,
Roy
mine
Rogers,
too.
man, with
Mine
that
too.
beautiful horse. What was his horse's name?
Trigger.
Trigger. That's right.
Good job, James.
Hey, and how about
He's a Palomino.
Yeah, great day, man. Tell it, man. Okay, what about his wife, Dale Evans? What was her horse's name?
I don't remember her horses, but they had a dog named Bullet.
That's right. Dog was named Bullet.
German Shepherd.
Man, you're talking some stuff. Now, what about Gene Autry?
You remember Colonel?
What was his horse's name?
Gene Autry's horse?
Yes.
Oh man, yeah, I don't.
Okay, I'm glad you asked. His horse's name was Champion.
Okay.
Champion. Now look at how. Okay.
Singing cowboy.
You know what? Now we're jumping a little bit from the Buffalo Soldiers. We're talking a bit about them, talking a bit about the Black Cowboys. How about Bill Pickett?
I've heard of him. A lot of people don't know he was a black cowboy.
He was a black cowboy back in the late 1800s, and he was the first in a rodeo to jump off of a horse onto the back of a bull.
Oh, wow.
And throw him to the ground. Well, that was a steer. That was a steer, really. Steer wrestling is what he was doing. He would bite the lip of the steer. And while he's biting that lip, he'd grab his horns and flip him to the ground. And that was called bulldogging, steer wrestling. And it's one of the most popular events today in rodeos. And everybody does it. The white man does it. But do they know who invented it?
Who invented it?
Bill
And
Pickett.
Ken, what about the cowboy name? I saw that, the cowboy name, and I don't know how true this is, but they said it was mostly related to, in the early stages, to black men because they called them boy anyway. And the cowboy name didn't, and they called the white riders cattlemen. And they didn't take on that name until much later. But originally, the cowboys were black because they called the black men black boys. So it became cowboys. I mean, I saw that somewhere. Is that historically true?
Yes,
as far as you know,
I'm gonna give you the true history about that.
Okay.
And listen to this, guys. Cowboy. Where did that name come from? It's in my book. It's right here.
Okay, you have to buy the book to find out.
But I'm going to tell you, cowboy, back in slavery time, we were slaves working the fields, working the tobacco fields, pulling corn and all that kind of thing. Hard work, hot times, hot summertime in August. I mean, hot times. You're out there working in the tobacco fields. And the slave master would say, boy, go out there and bring the cows in. Boy, Get the cows, boy. And it became cowboy, cowboy, slaves, black men. However, they weren't the only ones that were first called cowboys. It was the Mexicans that came here as well, and people like that that were, and I consider, you know, the Mexicans and people like that, people that were not white of
Yes.
color,
People of
they
color.
were called cowboy. But yes, the slaves, the black men, were some of the first to be called a cowboy, and the whites were also called wranglers because you handled the cows or the horses or animals. You were a wrangler. But today, everybody's called a cowboy. Back then, it was not a name to be proud of. But today, I'm proud to be called a cowboy. Why? Because look at what our ancestors went through.
Mm.
And everybody calls each other cowboy. But very few know the history
History of the
of,
cowboy.
of where that name came from. That's good stuff. That's good history, guys.
Yes,
It
it
And
is.
can I mention, did you guys see the movie Sally Hemings, An American Scandal? That was on CBS back in 2001, 2002, when that movie came out. I was in that movie. I was a slave. It was about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
had 7 children by
Yes.
him. You know, she was his mistress, a
Mm-hmm.
slave. You know, look at us now. That's why a lot of us have so many different colors. The black man and black woman has colors from white to red to green to black. It's we have colors. And that's why, because of our heritage, mixed blood. But mixed blood makes strong blood, makes you stronger. But that's what happened in that movie. And I was called Wrangler. Why? Because I was on horseback. I was riding a horse up and down the tobacco fields in that movie. And I was proud to play that part. Why? Because it was keeping alive our ancestors and who they were, what they did to get us to where we are today. And back to that fellow Scott, guys. Look at what he's tearing down. The history
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
the black people.
Exactly.
And the history that they want to take out in Virginia, they want to take it out of history. They want to go back so far, but not too far. You know, they don't want you to know all about the discoveries that you've done and what you have built this country with. They want to take it away from you. And our young brothers and sisters need to wake up. Wake up. Hear this history. Learn this history. Build this history. Take it on as we pass the baton to you. As I pass the baton as a Buffalo rider, keeping the history and the mission of the Buffalo Soldiers and the Black Cowboys alive, I'm passing you the baton, boys and girls. Wake up.
So,
Wake up.
Ken, are you how are you recruiting younger African Americans to participate in the Buffalo Riders to keep the legacy alive?
That's an excellent question. Excellent. You know, when these kids come and they see us on horseback and they want to ride, first thing they want to ride a horse. They're excited about our horse. They see Mr. Major. I want to ride. Okay, I get them out to the stable. I've had them to come out there. Sometimes a busload of kids come out to the stable, put them on a horse, walk them around, and tell them about the history, just like I'm speaking now, of the Black Cowboys, the Buffalo Soldiers. And what happens? They don't come back. Why? Because they find out that a horse is not something that you just look at and ride him. You got to maintain him. You got to brush him. You got to groom him. You got to bond with him. You got to clean and muck the stall. You got to do his hooves. You got to brush him down. You got to have his teeth floated, just like we clean our teeth. You got to do the horse's teeth like that. It's not easy work. It's a lot of work. So these young kids, they come out, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And once in a while, we would have one or two, and we do. One of our troopers, Anthony Trooper Boatner, his son was a member when he was about 8 or 9 years old, and on horseback. You've probably seen him in parades with us. in that parade of horses in Portsmouth that we founded, we would have sometimes 60 or 70 horses out there riding. So anybody that has a horse could ride with us, could have ridden. But, you know, he stayed for a while. And then the kids have other interests, guys. So if anybody has an answer, give it to me, because, you know, we are aging. You know, us guys are getting up in age. Some of us are not riding much anymore, you know, and I'm one that's not riding a whole lot myself. One thing because of time and because of speaking engagements, but I'm still telling the story. But yeah, I wish that we could somehow groom these kids. But you know what? It ain't over, boys and girls. It's not over yet, because somewhere I know we've probably touched some kid that says, you know what? I remember the Buffalo Riders. I remember them on horseback, and I went out to the stable and rode Mr. Ken's horse one time. Now I'm a grown man. I think I'm going to keep that history going. I'm going to start it. So it ain't over, guys. It might still be something that can happen.
Yeah, and I know the children used to enjoy seeing the Buffalo Riders riding up High Street, coming out, you know, just to see you all on horseback. And I wish it could kindle something within them to make them want to be a part of this history and keeping this history alive. But also, Ken, it's very expensive to maintain a horse.
Yes. Not only that, you have to have a trailer to transport your horse.
Exactly.
You know, you can't just have a horse. How am I going to get him from here up to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, you can't ride them on the interstate.
But listen, did you say you can't ride him on the interstate?
Right.
But Slim, let me give you a quick story. I was driving home one day, coming down 58. I saw a man on a horse and a pack horse behind him with stuff on it, packed just like you see a pack mule. And this man is coming up 58 on a horse. I had to pull over and stop. Man, where are you going? Who are you? And this is a true story, guys. True story. This man rode a horse from Florida.
Oh.
From Florida. Hear me now. Headed to New York on horseback. Tell the truth. And this is a true story. And he said, how do I what's the best way to get to New York? I'm on 58, I know. And I said, well, you know, you got to get on the interstate to get there. And I was telling him about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. It's probably the shortest way, but you can't ride the horse through the tunnel. So listen to this, guys. What happened? The guy was up on 264. He got up there on his horse and the pack horse. State trooper stopped him. What in the world are you doing up here on a horse? And he told him, oh, this guy, Ken Wright, told me that I could. Now, the trooper was familiar, thank God. He was familiar with me and the Buffalo Riders. He called me. He said, Ken, here's a guy up on the interstate on a horse. And he said, you told him to come up here. I said, Troop, let me tell you something. In the state of Virginia, if your transportation is a horse, you can ride a horse anywhere on the road.
Really?
In the state of Virginia. If that's your mode of transportation, you can ride that horse. So he said, well, you're telling me something now about history that I'm not sure about. He said, but I'll have to tell him he got to get off the interstate because these guys in these cars driving 65 or 70 miles an hour.
Not a good place to be.
It ain't a good place to be. So what happened? I met up with the trooper and I put him up at my stable overnight. Took him out, myself and a couple other Buffalo riders, took him and fed the horses, and we put him on my trailer, took him to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, right? Went through the tunnel to Route 13, unpacked him. He got off. He thanked us. He got on his horse and rode off. He made it. When he got there, he called me a few days later and thanked me again and said, I made it. to New York. Can you believe that story?
And that's an
Wow.
amazing story.
That's
Hey,
amazing.
hey, Ken, I want to bring the Colonel in here. I want to ask him, because often the Colonel comes on and talks about the history, as far as the military. And Colonel, as you talk about the Buffalo Soldier and all the things that they did, you had some of the Buffalo Soldiers even go to West Point,
Mhm.
and some of them were demoted for certain reasons and things like that. But I wanted to ask you, through your years in the military and going to school and everything, was it ever taught about the history of the Buffalo Soldiers and the significance, the things that they did historically, for this country? I remember one story I saw about Custer didn't even want to be one of the leaders of the Buffalo Soldiers, and the Buffalo Soldiers saved him one time.
Hmm.
If he had been more accepting of the Buffalo Soldiers, they might have saved him at his last stand.
Last stand.
But they had that problem, because they always had a white commander or something like that. But I'll go back to my question: were young soldiers or any of the soldiers or been doing now taught about, along with whatever else they're taught about West Point and all that, about the Buffalo Soldiers and their role as far as history in the military?
Well, I'll tell you, within the military and actually in the civilian sector, we as a people have a long history of being institutionally discriminated against. And it wasn't until 1948, I think, when President Truman issued the executive order eliminating segregation in the armed forces. But that discrimination continues today. And I remember when you said about asking about history that is taught. If you go to Presidio, there's which is in San Francisco, there is a military, used to be a big medical center called Letterman Medical Center. And now it's just a small clinic there. And Buffalo Soldiers were stationed there back in the day. And so if you go there, you can see the history of that unit there from way back in the day. And so as far as you talking about other history taught, I remember going through a military course called CAS-Q, what was above the advanced course in between, as your military education. And we always studied different battles, talk about the logistics of it or the strategies of different battles. And so we all had to pick, and dissect, different battles within our nation's history. And I remember there was another black guy with me. I can't remember his name, but we put out and we talked about black units, and Buffalo Soldiers was in one of those in that discussions, and it's an eye opener to our white counterparts. And so, yes, we have to teach that to others and bring that up, because history books don't want to see it, because we're being whitewashed out of history. Yeah. And so we have to study it, read it, and talk to our younger generation, and also talk to the people that are out here, our counterparts within the military and also in the civilian sector, to talk about our history. Because if we don't talk about our history, then they won't talk about it. And that history will be like dust blowing in the wind.
Yeah, yeah. And Ken, going back to you, you might appreciate this, Leah. I don't know if this lady, I can't think of her name, but we'll probably focus in on her next month during Women's History Month. It was a lady that was a part of the military back then, and she had to disguise herself as a man for many years before it was recognized. And they did give her an honorable discharge once they discovered she was a woman, but they had to put her out of the service. But she served several years. And I really don't know if she was a Buffalo Soldier, but she was around that time as in the military. one of the only women to serve in that capacity, but she had to disguise herself as a man. And how she did that for 2 years, I don't know. But are you
Oh
familiar
man,
with that story?
can I touch on that with you, Trooper? I mean,
Yes, yes, go ahead.
you're talking some good stuff, man. Look, you've been checking out your history. You've been reading, man.
Did a
Good
little
stuff,
research.
man, because you got to dig deep to find this stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a Buffalo Soldier female. There could have been many more, but we do know of the one, and her name was Cathay Williams. Cathay, Cathey, Cathay Williams. And can you imagine back during the 1800s? And she joined the Buffalo Soldiers in 1866. That's when they were founded. But during that time, coming out of slavery and so forth, women didn't have such beauty as they have now. Look at the beautiful Leah sitting there. Women didn't look like that. I mean, the hair was not done beautifully done. The face was not made up. They didn't have lipstick and all. They didn't look sweet and pretty. Okay, she disguised herself as a man, and she changed her name around to William Cathay.
Yeah.
William Cathay, Buffalo Soldier. And listen at this, guys. She served with bravery during this time alongside the men. But she was there for 2 years. What happened? She became ill. When she went to the infirmary, what happened?
They discovered.
This is a female. So they did honorably discharge her, but with no pay. No pay. And she was discharged. And she lived about 10 years after that, and when she passed away. But see, that's good history, Slim, that you brought up, man. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll concentrate again on that next month during Women's History Month. I think a lot of people don't know that story.
Yes. I've got a picture of her that in uniform. Let me see if I can grab it real quick and pull it up. I'll show you what image that they had of her during that time. And when you look at the image, you would say, "Wow, that is a guy. That's not a woman." Take a look here. Can you see her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Cathay Williams. So looking at that image, you would say, "Wow, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but you bring it back down. If you look at her, she does look a little, yeah.
She looks boyish.
Looks boyish, but I can maybe because I know she's a woman. That's my mind is focusing on that. But I can see the woman in her.
If you didn't know, you wouldn't pick up on it.
Yeah,
you wouldn't pick up on it.
I think my mind is.
And you really didn't have a reason to, because who would have thought that a woman is going to, join these troopers? But yeah, when I speak on it in lectures and so forth, I do mention Cathay Williams and who she was and what she did. Read about her, boys and girls.
Yeah.
Read about her, guys.
Yeah, and Ken, we still have some time, but I want you to be able to tell the people how they can get your book. You're not on Amazon, so they have to go directly to you, which is a good thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm not on Amazon, and I've got friends who have books on Amazon, and I hear some negative and I hear some positive and so forth and back and forth. So, my book is self-published, and my advice from publishers and so forth, my advice was to, Ken, just try it as it is and see how it does. Let me tell you something. The first printing of my book is already sold out. 100 and some copies already gone. This is the second printing of my book. And this second printing, I have copies that are already sold. So I'm doing very well selling out of my trunk, selling my book as I travel and speak, selling my book on Facebook.
Yeah, we had somebody last week
that
started out doing that same thing. Yeah,
exactly. Now, to get a copy of it, you can email me at KenWrightArt. The art is ART, KenWrightArt@cox.net. And then I will tell you what you need to do is you can either get it through Cash App, and that's my Cash App number is $Ken Wright and the numeral 10. You can get it that way, but through email me your address that I can mail the book to you. It's $19.95 and the shipping is $6. So that's about $26 to ship it to you, including shipping and handling. And that's the way you can get it. Or you can call me. I don't know if I should publish my phone number here on the air, but my email, kenwrighthart@cox.net, or you can come to my studio at the Arts Center in Norfolk, 740 Bush Street. You know, I'm an artist as well. That's what I am noted as, an artist and painter, very abstract works.
You'll have to come back and talk all about that too, because that's
yes. And so you can get the book at my studio, 740 Bush Street, at the Art Center. That's where my book is located, and you can grab it there. So it's easy to get your hands on this book, man, and it's a good story about it, and I'm excited about it. First time writing a book. Never thought that I would be an author. You know, I'm an artist. Now I'm an author. What's next, man? And I'm a speaker. I'm a horseman.
Yeah.
What's next?
But Ken,
what's next, Colonel?
Ken, has any of the schools invited you in to talk to the young people about this history?
Yes, they have. I've been to schools. I've been to Norfolk State elementary school. I've been talking to kids about it, and I've taken my horse. I've taken Major with me and put the kids up, walk them around. You know, I had somebody in their 30s now, almost 40, told me, Mr. Ken, I remember you brought your horse to my school when I was in the 3rd grade. You brought a brown horse. I said, yeah, that was before Mr. Major. That was Angel I brought. And so I've been doing it for years like that. So yeah, we need to keep it in front of our kids. Last Saturday, I was at church over in Norfolk, right off of Church Street. I was over there. They invited me to come to speak on its history. And we had about 30 little kids there. And one of the kids, this little, I guess she was about 3 or 4 years old, she got up and came up and stood next to me while I was speaking. And it was so neat. I say, hey, that's a photo shoot right there, guys.
That's for sure.
Picture, Mom. Take that picture, because that's history that she's going to tell when she's grown. And so they gave them all cowboy hats, and they gave them a Western scarf to wear. And so, yeah, I do go to the schools, but need to do it more, because to be honest, this year, doing Buffalo Soldier, doing Black History Month, none of the schools invited me. No, but I've been, churches and other places, libraries, to tell that history. But the schools need to be more diligent and more mission-wise to say, wait a minute.
And it doesn't have to be during Black History Month.
Yeah, because
we celebrate 365.
Right.
Amen.
That's right.
Keep this history going. All of this. I tell people, look, don't just think about Black history during this month. Keep it going, man. Keep it going. 12 months out of the year.
That's right.
I'm still black. I'll be black in March. Right. I'll be black then. But we didn't get this in school. Did you guys get it in school?
Not at all. Not at all. Ken.
No, I was grown when I first heard about Buffalo Soldier.
And I was too, man. Like I told you, my hero was Roy Rogers.
Yeah.
In archery. And back then, if you had told me about a Black Cowboy, I said, it ain't no such thing as a Black Cowboy.
Yeah. I didn't think they even existed.
And the people need to know that they still have Black Cowboy rodeos now.
Yeah.
The Bill Pickett rodeos.
Yes.
That's one that, in fact, when they used to come to Virginia Beach and have that rodeo, and the Buffalo Riders, we participated in that rodeo, but they don't come here anymore. The closest they come to us is up in Maryland.
Maryland, yes.
They come there, and we go up there sometimes, and open the rodeo up. We open up and bring the cowboys in. We ride in on horseback carrying the flags. And all the rodeo contestants are right behind us. And then we would have a couple of our guys. Let me tell you something, guys. Now, believe it or not, I have actually been on a Brahma bull. A Brahma bull.
Really?
You're a better man than I.
Rodeo.
I don't want to be near a bull.
Man, let me tell you something. Now, this bull was an older one. He was a little bit more quiet and calm. I don't know if they gave him some kind of shot or what, but the rider, the handler, told me, "Go ahead and mount that bull, man." And I said, "What?" He says, "Go ahead," but he says, "Be careful with your knees because he might try to hook you with his horns. You know, he might try to hook around and get you." So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna get on him, take my picture, and I'm getting off." I got on his back. The bull didn't move. He took a picture. I jumped off. So I
They sedated him, Ken.
Mission accomplished.
I was on a bull, a Brahma bull.
They sedated him, Ken, so that you could take that picture.
Hey, Ken, one other quick history. Let me know if this is true or not. I saw this, everybody heard about the Smokey Bear hat.
Yeah.
You know, how that hat is. Now, I saw somewhere where that was originally worn by the Buffalo Soldiers. So have you heard anything about that?
Well, the thing about that, some of the first guys that were park rangers.
Right. That they transitioned into park rangers after the Buffalo.
They were Buffalo
Soldiers.
That were park rangers, man. I mean, look at that history. That's what they did. They transitioned over to doing that. And, talking about the Buffalo Soldiers, too, from 1866, when they were founded, do you know how long they served?
Nope.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Let's get ready to ask that, too.
They served right on up through the Vietnam War.
Wow.
But not on horseback. The horses, they disbanded horse use in 1944.
44, yes.
It's when they stopped using the horse. Why? Because you had these tanks, you had these motor vehicles, and you didn't have to feed the vehicle. You didn't have to give it feed. You didn't have to groom it. You didn't have to put shoes on it and keep him healthy. So, so the motor vehicle kind of took over any use of having a horse. But sometimes they would use them in parades for show. But the Buffalo Soldier wore the armband patch, Buffalo Soldier, on up into the Vietnam War. And of course, then, units were integrated units. And so, Vietnam War. And guys say, well, man, how could you know these Buffalo Soldiers from 1800s? But I tell them, listen, man, they served on up into the Vietnam War. Buffalo Soldiers. Proud, man. Yes, proud.
Ken, quickly, I know our time is running out. How did you become involved with horses and riding? Because that's an expensive thing for Black people to be involved with.
Get my book.
Your book. I'm purchasing the book.
It's all in the book.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you real quick. I'm going to give you a tidbit of it. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I grew up in the city in Richmond. And my dad had a friend that had a farm outside of Richmond, Thorpe's Farm. He had 180 acres, and Black man. And he grew crops, and he had about 30 horses and cows and so forth. And we would go out there, and that's where my love for horses started. And they would put me on this horse called Big Mac, Big Boy. That horse is about 17 hands tall. I mean, he was way up in the air.
Wow.
And they put me on Big Boy and taught me how to ride him. I was about 8 or 9 years old. My brothers and my sister, we all would go out there. And I never lost that love for horses. And I'll tell you a funny story too. My mom would call me in to eat dinner. I'd be outside playing with the kids, and she'd call me in. I didn't want to come in. She said, "Stop being stubborn like a mule." And I said, "I don't want to be a mule. I want to be a horse." And so when I became an adult, a grown man, I still had my love and still have it for horses. and I started buying horses about 30 years ago.
Wow.
I've had 8 horses total.
Mm.
Horses, ponies, mini horses, a miniature horse, and I've had him in parades. I don't have him anymore. I just have Mr. Major now. But yeah, I never lost my love for horses,
That's
and
good.
I often wondered why. And I think it's basically, I guess, from my ancestry blood, that we're horse people too. And I just kept that love for horses. So that's the reason that I do it and have done it.
Great, great.
Well, what great information we got today, and I'm glad you agreed to come on and share your book. And like I said, you have to come back because your main thing is being an artist, and you've been doing that forever. And where you started your craft at Norfolk State University.
That's right.
That's where you got a degree in art, right?
That's right.
Okay,
Man,
so
you've been studying on Ken Wright, haven't you?
I've been looking you up. But
we need to mention that his paintings were in the White House as well.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
2 presidents, Bush and Obama. Yeah,
yes.
That's right. George W. Bush has my painting that was in the White House, and right now it's in his collection in the presidential library in Texas. And President Obama, I was commissioned to do a painting for him, and that piece, I don't know where it is with him now. I don't know if it's but I don't know if his presidential library is complete or not. But I'm sure it's going to be somewhere around there. But let me tell you a quick story about that. When I went to the White House and visited there, my wife and I, and we toured the White House and went to the Rose Room. Mm-hmm. That's the room that's all red and rose color. Mm-hmm. That's where my painting was hanging. And I asked the fellow that was giving the guide, security guy, I says, tell me about Ken Wright. Tell me about the artwork that's up here. Tell me a little bit about that. Oh, he didn't know much about it. He said, oh, I don't know. He's probably a guy from New York or somewhere, I said, is that right? He says, yeah. I said, well, let me tell you something, Trooper. You're looking at him. You're looking at the artist that created. You know what he did? He called security. You know that little phone thing he got on the shoulder? He called saying, hey, it's a fella here that says he's the artist that Bush got this painting from him. And the curator said to him, you are talking to the artist, man. That guy, man, I could have, man, I tell you what, he turned red as a beet, boy. Yeah. But yeah,
you just told me something right there. He turned red. Okay.
Say no more. Say no more.
Say no more.
Say no more. Exactly.
Yes, indeed. Again, thank you, and we appreciate you. Any other last comments from our host?
Well, Ken, it's always a pleasure to be in your presence. You always give so much information whenever I'm around you. I will purchase the book, Ken. And I need to get over to the Art Center because I know you've also done some things for Friends of the Juvenile Courts when they had their fundraiser, when you painted those chairs for them.
Ooh,
so,
wow. Yes.
So you've done some amazing things in the community. And I think more of the young people need to hear from you because the way you tell your story is so animated. It would keep the young people engaged in what you're telling. Yes. And it's a story that needs to continue. So, Ken, I just want to say thank you so very much for all that you do. And I'm going to find some classes to get them to invite you in because the children need to hear this story.
Yes.
And they need to hear it from you. They don't need to read it they need to read. We always need to read, but they need to hear the story from you because you can really get them engaged and excited about the Buffalo Soldiers. So I thank and the Black Cowboys. So I thank you so very much.
Leah, thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. And, I just say it again. I just give God the glory because it's him speaking through me as I talk and as I learn. I'm still learning. I'm still picking up information myself. But it's good stuff to know. It is. And whether or not you use it, but you know it. And you can speak on it when somebody talks about a black cowboy or talk about a Buffalo Soldier. Tell them about Bass Reeves.
Yeah, about that.
1800s from Oklahoma and territories like that is where he served, and where he actually was a marshal.
Yeah.
Arresting
Tell
criminals.
them about the real Lone Ranger.
Boy, that's the real Lone Ranger.
That's
and
right.
do you know,
That's right.
people are talking about the Lone Ranger, the one that we saw on TV. And when you mention Bass Reeves, now they want to talk about the Lone Ranger that you see on TV.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
And Kemosabe.
you know, he was based also in Arkansas. That's where the jail was located, and it's still there.
Mhm.
And in fact, someone that has my book that's in Arkansas called me and said they're going to have a celebration of Bass Reeves' life in Arkansas, and would I come down and be a part of that and talk about my book? And I said, absolutely. So don't know when or how it's going to come through, but you know, that sounds like something that might be going on.
Yes.
That's going to be amazing. And Colonel, any last, because I still believe my cousin would have been a Buffalo Soldier if he had been born in that era. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing, because as you keep the Buffalo Soldiers alive, and by spreading the knowledge that you've gained, you also spread Black history, which is American history. And we have to look at it in the context of, especially in these days, how we're trying. Some people were say they feel uncomfortable, and that might be one of the reasons that you weren't invited back, because we're in this political nonsense that some of the young kids from our some of our sick white brethren out there saying we can't talk about other people of color. So I want you to keep on doing what you're doing, because
thank you so much.
it is something that has to be done. Has to be done for our own survival, because if you don't know where you've been, there's no way you know what you're going to do in the future.
Yes,
so
right.
I'll end it that way.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
no limit.
I know we'll look. Go ahead, Ken. I'm sorry.
As I say, it's no limit to it. And, and this is something that I hadn't planned. And I didn't plan this part of my journey to be an author or to be a professional artist. And look where the journey is taking me. So I asked that question too. Where do we go from here? We just keep doing what we're doing. I keep doing what I'm doing. And wherever I'm asked to come to speak, I'll come and I'll do it. And if Major feels like it, I'll get him and saddle him up and bring him on with me. But let's keep it going. That's our history. That's American history.
Yes.
Okay, thanks everybody, and remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. This is information. This is a bit of history you don't want to miss. So before we go, I have to pay a little bit of this. I know we're a little over, but
in the 1800s, in Arizona and Mexico, came a brand new soldier. The Indians called him Buffalo. From prison camps to slavery, the black man came to be. He was a hard-working hero of the 10th Cavalry. Many of the soldiers thought they wanted to be there. They were tired of hatred. They were so tired of hurt.
all right. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
Thank
Ken.
you so much.